Okay, we are live. I'm seeing two of myself on this Zoom. It's tough, but I'm going to make it through. Hello, everybody. Wow. I hope everybody watching is feeling healthy and safe right now. What a crazy time. Welcome. This is Generator Live in quarantine times. Generator was founded in 2016 by my co-founder Glennis Mahar and myself to gather and talk about politics without feeling dumb. We want to define minimal civic engagement and embody that, raise the bar off the floor, and encourage others to do the same and just raise the bar an inch off the floor. Specifically, Gen Z and millennials, who we feel we can reach. And, for us right now, minimal civic engagement is voting. Before quarantine, we were like, you got to just vote in every election and canvass once every 4 years. That's the minimum. Things have changed since we've gotten into quarantine, and we have an amazing guest here to help illuminate what the future looks like. We're going to do this live in person in May, but now since we're in COVID times, we're adjusting. So, oh my goodness, I am so thrilled and humbled and just so curious for answers from our guest, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Give it up at home for Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Woo! Thank you so much for joining us, Senator. It's amazing to have you. Thank you.
I'm delighted.
And I have to remind you, the level at which I'm going to be asking is Homer Simpson level. We really pride ourselves on not knowing too much about the system.
Perfectly fine for me.
So you have been a senator since 2009, and you were in the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2009. I didn't tee that up correctly. Just wanted to say you're a really experienced politician, and you were born and raised in the state of New York, correct? Yeah, me too. And same with my co-founder, Glennis. So before we get into our harder hitting questions, what are you binge watching right now?
So I just started to watch The Crown, and it's fascinating. I like it because it's historical. I'm learning a lot about history post World War II, and it's really, really good. The acting's great, and the content's terrific.
Cool. I've heard a lot about The Crown. I haven't ventured in yet. So what is your job is normally you're going to Albany most days, right? What does your day look like right now? I'm sure a lot like the rest of ours, but how are you? What's your typical day right now in quarantine?
So my job is to represent the whole state on behalf of our state with the federal government. So I would normally be in Washington voting and writing bills, writing legislation. But under COVID-19, I'm in my home calling people around our state, talking to the governor, talking to Senator Schumer, talking to the whole congressional delegation, talking to advocates. I just did a call today with a bunch of not-for-profit smaller schools throughout my state. I did a call with the AARP and let members from across the state call in. I've talked to manufacturers in upstate New York. I've talked to the homeless shelters, the shelters for domestic violence survivors. I've talked to the food banks. And so I'm talking to stakeholders all day long about what their concerns are, their worries are, and then trying to take that information and make sure that their views are represented in the next COVID bill to provide more relief for people who are unemployed, for businesses that are shut down, for hospitals, for hospital workers, for critical workers, for everyone on the front lines of this disease to try to overcome it and ultimately destroy it. So we are working really hard to get more resources where they need to go. And I inform myself by talking to New Yorkers directly and then trying to put that into legislation.
Right. And you must get, you're saying, a swath of the whole state to see, not just who in the city or Long Island or upstate, but just to get the temperature of how everybody's trying to live their lives.
I'll call everywhere in the state, from elected leaders from small towns to the mayor of New York City.
Gotcha. Right. And I said Albany, but it's DC
Well, I'm
that you
from
work
Albany, so
primarily
I
in.
do love going to Albany, and my home is in Troy, which is very close to Albany.
Gotcha. So what is, it's like, I think everybody on an individual level is figuring out what does this mean for themselves personally. You're taking this on for the state. What is the chain of command? Like, you and Senator Schumer must, you guys are talking and partner in this way as New York's senators, but what's the chain of command with the governor, the president, and state legislation,
So we all
state
work
legislatures?
Senator Schumer and I, as senators, we have the same job, but we have different areas of expertise. So we work really seamlessly together. He is the most senior Democrat within all Democratic senators. He's our Democratic leader. So he's in charge of negotiating with Mnuchin this week to see what's in the next bill. He'll negotiate with Mitch McConnell. He'll negotiate with the president. So he's really in charge of speaking for all the Democratic senators and the states that are represented by those senators in those negotiations. What I do to help him in this moment is I call all the stakeholders around the state and let him know what people are saying, what's working, what's not working, where the funds are needed. We both talk to the governor regularly to make sure we understand what his priorities are, what his concerns are. We also talk to our delegations, so I can talk to the Congress members from every part of the state. And I do that often. We just had a delegation call yesterday with the city council in New York City and the entire New York delegation. So I'm listening to my colleagues and then funneling information in a way to get to Senator Schumer. So when he's negotiating these bills, he has all the most up-to-date information. I also advocate on behalf of New York to the administration. So I've sent a bunch of letters to Trump and to his administration over the past month about what they're doing wrong and what needs to change. For example, we know that hospitals ordered PPE, masks, gowns, ventilators directly from manufacturers. And we also know FEMA took those orders and said, no, we're first in line. We're taking everything you ordered and we're distributing it. And so I wrote a letter to President Trump and said, what the hell's going on here? This is not okay. And you need to have transparency. Why are you taking things that are ordered? Where are you sending them? Who gets priority? Is need an issue? Because these are hospitals that are at the edge of an outbreak and they desperately need this PPE and equipment. So I try to hold the administration accountable by writing letters, writing legislation, and then trying to make sure what's in these reform bills makes sense.
And you were saying that you talk to people all around the state, and I called your office and posted the video just to like share what it looks like and feels like to call a representative's office, and you guys received it. I mean, you really take these calls. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't really start calling my reps until 2016, but it works. It's almost like with TV and ratings. Those are your ratings, what you hear from your audience and the people you serve.
Yeah, I was on a call just last week or just a couple days ago with WAMC and also the week before with Brian Lair. And constituents called into that call. And one was a single mom with 3 kids who was living in a homeless shelter and couldn't help her kids remote learn because they didn't have any tablets or computers. They didn't have Wi-Fi. And so because she called into that show, I was able to get her number and start working on getting her tablets for her kids, getting access to Wi-Fi, and hopefully more permanent housing down the line. So we really do try to listen to our constituents and then help them in every way we can. We've been working nonstop since we've had the COVID epidemic, getting New Yorkers back to the state. We had New Yorkers stuck in Peru, New Yorkers stuck in so many different countries around the globe. And our office worked nonstop to get these folks back. So we do everything. We any type of federal help someone needs, we try to intervene. People who needed to get a hospital bed, people who needed resources, who weren't getting their unemployment check, people who were trying to apply to SBA and couldn't get through. So we help everyone in those ways.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff to organize.
I have 60 people on my team. So it's a real office and we work hard to meet the needs of people.
Wow. So their unemployment is is rising in scary numbers right now. Almost 17 million people filed for unemployment in the US. We're thinking a lot about New York specific questions. And, I have friends in New York who were filing for unemployment, and the site was crashing in the same way that grocery delivery sites are crashing. There's just this unprecedented high demand. How is New York responding to this?
Well, New York's been working really hard. Our governor's doing a great job of trying to be a strong voice for the country and for his state. But there's still not enough equipment. We don't have enough PPE for our hospital workers and our other critical workers. Many people at grocery stores still don't have masks or shields. Many people who are frontline workers in a hospital, have to reuse their gowns or their masks. We just don't have enough. So I don't think any state was particularly well prepared to have all the things they needed for this. It's quite an extreme epidemic. But our team, our staff, they're working overtime. They're doing an amazing job to try to meet the needs of people from the federal perspective. So I couldn't be more grateful to them. I've had staff who have been sick. I've had staff who have family members who have been sick. We have friends who have lost loved ones. So it's a tough time for everybody. But
Yeah.
I'm most inspired by our first responders and our critical workers who are literally answering the call of duty every day and making us all very proud.
Yeah, it's been an amazing thing to see state government step up in this way of almost accountable for federal responsibility. Speaking of the PPE supplies, can we just talk about the Defense Production Act? There's, apparently this option, you can bring us back to speed, this option of, turning any manufacturing area or whatever, factory into a PPE supply factory.
Right.
We have that option. Why is it not?
Trump's just not using it. He's not using it effectively. So if I was president, I would be doing it very differently. First of all, I would be having a medical supply chain that's functioning so that every frontline worker would get masks and shields and the equipment they need and ventilators. We should have used the Defense Production Act starting in January so that the supply chains could have been ramped up. We could have started producing vaccines and therapeutics and other treatments that we're desperate for now. The fact that we don't have universal testing in any city yet in the country, the fact that no one can get a test on demand is pretty outrageous. Other countries have done far better in getting testing up and running, which has really allowed them to stop the spread quicker and more efficiently. So the president really dropped the ball on making sure we have testing, and we still don't have testing. So he's still failing. So it's hard. President Trump really never took this seriously, and he's been doing half measure after half measure, and it shows.
Yeah, thank you so much to you and your staff for helping save and putting their own personal experiences aside to help the greater population. And I'm wondering, what do you see as the future of getting tests out? I totally do not and haven't in normal times, but in this crisis, I don't trust the federal government to execute anything well, no matter how necessary. Do you think the testing is going to fall on the state? But even if it does, we need national level production.
Correct.
Right?
We do need national level production. We need the labs that have figured out testing, rapid tests like Abbott Labs and Roche to be able to produce far more tests and then get them to every community and not leave some communities behind. You can't pick and choose your favorite states. You can't pick and choose the communities that you like better. You got to send it to greatest good, greatest need. You got to get it out the door, and you got to make it ubiquitous. And that's not what they're doing. So it's frustrating because for New York not to have universal testing as the epicenter of the spread right now, it's devastating. And if you're a city that's just starting to spread, like DC or Detroit or New Orleans, I mean, these mayors are overwhelmed because they need support from the supply chain.
Is that this big stimulus bill was passed, $2 trillion that you're calling a triage bill, meaning it's helping a crisis, but this is not sustainable. I mean, is that triage bill meant to set up this testing?
So it has some money for testing in it, but what the bill was is to get money immediately to the hospitals, money immediately to the states and cities, money to people who are unemployed so they could get a check for the next 4 months, and money to small businesses. That's what our first effort was about, trying to give money to the places where it was most urgently needed. We're working on
but if that's New York, then how do we not have the testing in place? I mean, like I just imagine it's
because they haven't federalized it, and not that we want this president to be in charge of anything at this point, but they've not federalized it. So it's up to the private labs. And so these private companies that have created the tests, they're just selling the tests to whoever wants to buy them. And I don't know what priority they're giving to any state that needs it. So we don't know. We don't have oversight or accountability over these private labs. And the president could have oversight and accountability if he used the Defense Production Act effectively, but he's not doing that. So we have no insight into when we will get the testing and how long it will take and why it's taking so long, because he's leaving it in the hands of private companies.
Like, I have to just think it's for profit and making this an opportunity for profit, because I see and hear your competence, and I see and hear Trump's complete incompetence and his team's incompetence. Like you're willing to just give him the answers on the test, right? And it's like he's not even taking. If he took your answers on the test and then applied them, people would be like, "Great job!" It feels like there's so many.
Much better. I mean, the countries that are doing well, what distinguishes them is they took it seriously. They instituted social distancing and stay-at-home policies immediately, and they got testing up and running in every community. As soon as you get testing, then you have it. You might be an asymptomatic spreader. Stay home. Don't expose anyone because you're contagious. Like those basic facts are things we don't have. Asymptomatic spreaders haven't gotten tested at all. The only people who have been allowed to be tested in most states are people who are in the hospital and sick already. So not even someone who could be spreading it, someone who might die from it is getting tested. And that's not how you nip this in the bud. It's not how you defeat COVID. You need universal testing.
Yeah, I have a friend in California who's getting a test. She's paying $300 for it. So I heard that and I was like, okay, so this is a private. She said a private company is coming to her house,
wow.
Like a profit-based.
Making money off it, which is total BS. Like that is not. Again, the president is doing something
about. This should be a governmental thing, so that people feel also to know that it would be coming would make people feel better to know
your friend might be being scammed. Like you don't especially for our seniors and people who are frightened, like these criminals will take advantage of people just to take their money. And it's outrageous. So I would tell your friend to be careful, because if they're charging you $300 to come to their house, they may well be illegal scammers. And they might not
and it's also, there's no, how could it be federally approved? There's no testing on it yet. Like, who knows that it totally could be.
Well, we have real tests. I mean, Roche and Abbott did come up with rapid tests where you can get the result within 15 minutes. We also have the antibodies test that's available in several different forms. And that can tell you if you've already had it, but they're false positives, so it's not perfect. And several of the hospitals in New York are using that test already. So there are tests available. It's just that they're not available for anybody who wants them. They're available to hospitals and to people sick, which is a good place to start. And certainly we want to be able to test all our healthcare workers so they don't put themselves in danger.
Yeah.
So we have to reserve the tests for now to first responders, healthcare workers, and people who are sick. But again, if you want to stop the spread of the disease, you need to test everyone so we can stop the spread of the 25% who have it but don't have symptoms, the asymptomatic spreaders.
Like, there is a way that this could be, I think we've been so mistreated as people by the current administration that part of me is like, there's no way that it could be done correctly, but there is. Like, these tests with the Defense Production Act
in several countries at this point.
So you're fighting for extended paid family and sick leave during this crisis. I don't know. It's just like, how did this get left out? It feels like our
it's the best solution and the most obvious. Speaker Pelosi tried to put it in the second bill, COVID 2, but Mnuchin really pushed back. So at the end, they got in about 25% of businesses were covered. They had to be businesses of less than 500 employees, but more than 50, and net, it covered about 25%. Same with sick days. Only about 25% of companies are mandated to require 2 weeks of sick days. But we were talking about the food supply chain. The people working in food production factories, on farms, and if they're not unionized in grocery stores, they might not have 2 weeks sick days. So why would you want people in the food supply chain working if they're sick? It's not right.
Right.
And that's why these reforms are so essential. All workers should have 2 weeks of sick days, and all workers should have up to 3 months of paid leave if their child's home from school, if they themselves are sick, if someone they in their family that they need to keep care of is sick. Every industrialized country in the world has national paid leave except for America. It's disgraceful.
And it is disgraceful. Like, I can't even imagine on like Mnuchin, like, what's the level of conversation? How can he even, like, we don't have the money? Like,
no,
what's the excuse?
They don't tell businesses what to do. So they're ideologically disposed to side with people who care about their bottom line more than their employees. And that's a problem. And second, there's not enough female lawmakers. I think women tend to be more often than not caregivers in their families. And so we tend more often than not to understand why this matters. And unfortunately, most of Congress is white, male, and privileged and doesn't know what it's like to not have unlimited care when needed because they have unlimited money. But for middle-class families, for working families, having access to paid leave is everything if your mother's dying, everything if you have a sick child or your spouse is sick. Those are the moments in life when having to choose between a paycheck and caring for the person you love are gut-wrenching. And it's outrageous that we don't have it in this country. And I think it's because we don't have enough women in politics. I think it's because the people in charge tend to be extremely wealthy and not very empathetic. And that's why I spend a lot of my free time trying to elect more women to Congress.
Yeah. What is, can you speak to your organization about this goal?
Yeah. So about 7 years ago now, I founded a group called Off the Sidelines, which was a call to action to America's women to participate, asking them to vote, asking them to run for office. If they didn't want to run for office, to support a woman who was running, to change the players list. Because frankly, Congress, again, too white, male, and wealthy. We really needed more diversity terribly. Both gender and racial and socioeconomic diversity makes a difference, because if you have a seat at the table, you can change the policies and you can decide which policies are important and which ones are being left behind, and offer better solutions. It was the first time the number of people in Congress that were women went down. And so I thought, gee, I got to do something. So I founded this group. Since founding, we've raised about $8 million for women candidates, more than $1 million for women of color candidates. And we have created giving circles across the country. We have 17, and they're kind of like book clubs. And you join a group and you'll host 2 senators, 5 senators, 10 candidates, whatever number you want over the cycle. And everybody who's part of your book club writes them a check. So those giving circles raised an additional, I think it's an additional $8 million. Like, it's a lot of money. Wow. So we've been doing really well, raising money, raising awareness, lifting up candidates. I did an event today for one of my candidates that I support, MJ Hager, who's running for Senate in Texas. And it was a fun event because it was a Zoom event just like this. And people paid, I don't know, a few, $25 to join the Zoom and send it directly to MJ. It was terrific. So I'm doing events even during COVID remotely on Zoom to raise money for these candidates. And we need to flip the Senate. We only need 4 seats. And frankly, I've got about 12 candidates that are amazing. So I really believe we will flip the Senate. And hopefully the people who are watching will realize that their voice can go a long way if they pick candidates and follow them and amplify their voices, send them money, whatever they can do, it makes a difference.
So Off the Sideline is is the group to go to either become a female, to run for office as a woman, or support a woman running for office.
I help candidates, I advise candidates, I raise money for candidates, I lift up their voices. It's offthesidelines.org.
That's awesome. So speaking of flipping the Senate, can we talk about voting for a second and what that's going to look like, and how people can ensure that their right to vote is protected? Of the $2 trillion for the stimulus bill, $400 million is going to protecting voting rights nationally, and $20 million is going to New York's voter protection. What do you think of this 20 million? Is it enough? What's it being spent on? Is it literally like printing and mailing ballots? Like, what does this look like? What do you think the 2020's elections are going to look like and should?
So I'm deeply troubled about 2020, obviously. We had a lot of worries before COVID of Russian interference, Chinese interference, meddling. So some of this money is to protect for security, to truly make sure that we don't get hacked again. $20 million is not enough. We have to get more. But some money is for making sure everyone can vote in November. So increasing access, making sure we do vote by mail, making sure people can vote curbside, making sure we have election day off, making sure people can vote early. All the flexibility in voting reform that can make a difference for making sure more people can vote. And so this amount of money was just the first step towards doing that. The Republicans, unfortunately, have not wanted to shore up our voting rights. President Trump has been vociferously against vote by mail, even though he just mailed his own ballot in.
Oh my God. Didn't he specifically say that if there were, if it was vote by mail, Republicans wouldn't win?
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah. He said what they don't say out loud, and he said it out loud. But I've been working on it for a long time. I wrote a really comprehensive bill with John Lewis, who is civil rights icon, House member. And we took pretty much every reform you could want to make our voting rights more secure. And the House passed most of those reforms in HR 1. It was the first thing they passed, was a bunch of voting reform pieces. And then the Senate, we chopped it up into separate bills, and we haven't gotten votes on them because Mitch McConnell doesn't want to secure voting rights.
Right.
That's why we need to flip the Senate. And that's why I'm working to flip the Senate.
So what can, it's like I called your office and I'm here in New York, and you wrote the bill that I'm like hoping, that I would want to get passed, that I would be voting for. Like, how can Americans either in New York or around the country watching this contribute to voting by mail? Is that the gold standard? Is that just like what we need? I mean, Trump said it. They wouldn't win. They something that we say a lot, because we've talked with Eric Holder about voter suppression, is if Republicans didn't cheat, they couldn't win. And Trump proved that to be true, right? He's like, voting by mail is just increasing the access. If that were just passed, voting would be safer and freer and truer than it's ever been before. Is that the thing that we should, the one thing that we can do? At Generator, we talk about minimal civic engagement. What's the minimum that can make you say, I'm a proud citizen? Is it calling and hounding our reps to do vote by mail?
Just voting. If you vote in any way, in any form, that is the best thing you can do as a citizen. So vote by mail, we're going to urge because it's a way to protect given COVID. It's also a way to help people who have bad hours and don't know that they can make it to the voting booth on election day. It has resulted in more participation by certain groups of people. Seniors really benefit from vote by mail, but also people who work long hours, just knowing they can get that ballot mailed. We want to make sure that the postage is paid for because we don't want to create another impediment of people not getting to have their vote count because they don't have a stamp. So there's a lot of work that we want to do to make voting easier. But the best thing all of your viewers can do is just promise they're going to vote in whatever way we are allowed to vote come November.
Gotcha. So we'll just focus on voting. I mean, I was looking for a specific action item of call and vote and get it to be mail-in ballots. But really, if we just focus on voting, however that is.
Sure everyone's registered. So one thing you can do with your group is just making sure everybody has a plan to vote, that they've already registered to vote, that they know where they're voting, and really just lay it out, and then make sure everyone they know and love votes too. So making it the thing that they work on together.
Cool.
The other thing you can do
the
other thing you can do is if you do want to get more involved in a race, is you can make phone calls for that candidate. It really helps. When I ran for Congress in 2006, I ran in upstate New York, and my district was a 2-to-1 Republican district. It was quite red. And The reason why we won is because the grassroots were so dedicated. We were knocking on 20,000 doors every weekend, 10,000 phone calls every night. And the combination of that was that every voter was touched 5 times before the election. And someone could say, well, Kirsten's my candidate, please vote for her. So to the extent anyone watching this wants to become really active, getting involved with a candidate, just take any one of those Senate races, any House race in New York, any local city council race in New York City, whatever it is, pick your candidate, follow the candidate, retweet their stuff, repost their stuff, whatever they're doing. And then come election day, call their campaign and say, I want to do phone calls for you. And then the weeks up until election day, just try to make 10 phone calls a day, touching voters saying, I'm voting for so-and-so because so-and-so believes in A, B, and C, whatever it is that makes you excited about them.
And at the Senate level, we're trying to flip just 4 seats. So at the Senate level, that would help as well as the presidential level.
Holding the House and then winning the Senate.
Yeah. And, also for our Gen Z and millennial voters who were, bummed to see Bernie drop out and Elizabeth drop out, Joe Biden hasn't been my candidate all along. I am going to wholeheartedly vote for Joe Biden. And I wanted to hear, I know you recently endorsed him. Just want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes. I think this is a moment for unity based on our views of the world, about helping everyone, about opportunity for everyone. And both Bernie and Liz ran terrific campaigns. They ran amazing campaigns that inspired millions of people and really talked about big, far-reaching reform that was exciting. I ran on a lot of the same issues they ran on, so I enjoyed their campaigns. I felt very much in solidarity with both of them in the small amount of time that I was running. And I've endorsed Joe as our soon-to-be nominee because I think he is the candidate for this moment that we're in. I mean, he won the most votes. He won the most states. And what that tells me is that his message really resonated. And people are looking for someone with a lot of experience, who they can feel a sense of certainty with, somebody who's done the hard work before, who knows how to bring the country together, knows how to represent red, purple, and blue places well. And I think that's why he did best. So for all of us who tried and did not succeed, I think we can feel good that our ideas are out there and those ideas will be lifted up. And I believe that Vice President Biden is the man for this moment. I think people want that sense of calm and that sense of knowing him and having known him for a long time. And his resilience and his empathy, I think, really resonate. So we can all help him win. And certainly I'm going to do that. Bernie's going to do that. We're all going to do that. And for those first choice candidate didn't make it. It's okay. All of us
Right.
are going to keep serving. Liz, Bernie, and I are all going to work really hard in the Senate on the agendas that we ran on
Right.
and help the next president, hopefully Vice President Biden, be a great leader. And we will pass the legislation in the Senate that we think he will want to sign.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really exciting to hear. It's like, if your candidate that you were hoping for isn't the one, they're still out there doing it. And
Yes.
a Joe Biden presidency would lift up the ideas that people have been excited about way more effectively than continuing this incompetence that we're experiencing now that is really, really dangerous.
And those campaigns made those ideas that much more likely to be passed.
Right.
Because, running on healthcare is a right and not a privilege, making sure anyone can have access to Medicare, making sure that people can be debt-free for college, making sure that if you go into public service, you can have all your debt be eliminated. Those are exciting ideas that came up through the presidential campaign of other candidates that I think Vice President Biden will be excited about and will work towards passing at least some version of, will go through the Senate.
That is awesome. Senator Gillibrand, I'm like, I'm like foot clamped. I am so honored that you, we are just so excited to have you, both Generator and WNYC in the green space. And I want to thank you again and thank your 60 employees for hearing our state and hearing
awesome
Americans.
Good job. I'm very grateful.
Amazing, just like superheroes. And also for those, you and your employees, for lifting up the people who are keeping our society running: nurses, doctors, physicians assistants, nurse practitioners, mail carriers, grocery store workers. You guys are really, I feel such hope in humanity because of the work that you guys do. And I feel taken care of. I don't feel taken care of at this federal level, but
all the topics that you chose are great. And to the extent people got their questions answered, I'm happy to do it. And I'm happy to do this anytime you want to do it.
Thank you. And thank you as a New York citizen. Thank you for your access and accessibility. We appreciate it so much. Thank you.
God bless.
You too. God bless you. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
And for Generator, just our next event will be like this, WNYC, a live stream like this with Eric Holder, who is the king of fighting voter suppression, on 4/20 LOL at 4 p.m. So talk to you then, and thanks for tuning in. And vote. I will be voting for Joe Biden with my entire heart. Have a good one. Be safe, be healthy. Truly, God bless you. Bye.